Rick Klein. So, Donna, it looks like a circular firing squad of Democrats up there. What is the strategy?
First of all, it's not circular. It's coming from one side, and that side is not even at the table because they're AWOL. What's happening right now is the Democrats are trying to put together the best possible package for the American people. What happened this week? We avoided a government shutdown, which is important because federal workers didn't want the uncertainty. We made sure that the transportation bill was extended for 30 more days. That's 3,700 people that didn't get furloughed this week. What we have to face the consequences of putting forward two bills that have a hefty price tag. But here's what Speaker Pelosi has said from day one. We're going to pay for it. We're going to pay for it. Now, Republicans are still trying to hold on to the past and the Trump tax cuts. The Democrats are saying, you know what? We're going to invest in the American people with those three buckets. Thank you, Rachel. Those three buckets because they contain jobs. We're going to retool the American workforce. Yes, Chris. We're going to give free college, and that's important, Chris. Right. And here's what else. We're going to tackle climate change so that we never have to suffer the consequences of a Sandy or Ida.
You don't think this week went well for Democrats, do you?
It depends on which side of the aisle you're looking. If you're a Republican, you're saying, oh, my God, look at those folks. But if you're a Democrat, you're saying, you know what? We're having a robust conversation about the future of the American workforce, and we're having a robust conversation about health care and our transportation needs. Look, I'm a Democrat. We like to talk to each other.
All right, Rachel, you were up there in the middle covering all of this, and Playbook put it very provocatively that when Biden went up there on Friday, he was essentially whipping against his own bill.
Well, look, those aren't my words.
Yeah.
I got a call on Friday night from a very senior, very upset Democrat who was like, I've never seen anything like this. I mean, there were a lot of Democrats on the Hill that were looking to President Biden this week for some leadership. What do you want? Do you want an infrastructure bill passed this week? Do you want to take that win? But they couldn't get clarity. How did he want them to vote? You know, Pelosi kept delaying this vote because the progressives were saying they weren't going to support it, and she didn't have the numbers, and they were trying to get a separate reconciliation deal. And then the president came to the Hill on Friday, and he said, we're going to wait. We're going to hold off on this until we get both of these packages negotiated. And I think, you know, that means that there are some promises that were made to moderate Democrats about having a vote on infrastructure this week. They want to campaign on that. They want that victory. And, you know, Speaker Pelosi said she was going to give them this vote, and then President Biden came in and totally trampled it. And so there's a lot of people on the Hill, Democrats, who are very frustrated right now. They feel like, you know, their promises are not being kept. You know, progressives, there was a sort of secret agreement contract thing that was released this week. We reported on it at Politico between Chuck Schumer and Joe Manchin.
It was signed and everything. It was
signed. Yeah. It was bizarre, and it said the top line number would be 1.5 when progressives were thinking it was 3.5, and it dated back to July. I mean, there's so much uncertainty and no clear strategy, and people are privately very upset.
And there's no clear path, Rick, because I mean, we see where Sinema is. She's not getting any softer on this. That statement overnight was tough. We know where Manchin is. And you just heard Bernie Sanders say $2 trillion is nowhere near enough.
Right. President Biden has been shopping that number in the low twos. I'm told that the White House has been saying we need something that the number has to start with a 2. The rest of it is just hundreds of billions of dollars in between. But you're right. Look, you've got people that are taking different lessons out of this week, and they see a president that isn't as engaged on one side or the other. He's kind of still sounding people out. And I think where Democrats' problem here is there's just so much mistrust. They really don't like each other. They don't believe in each other's same political motives. And the problem, though, I think isn't that they're lying to each other. It's actually that they've been honest with each other, and they don't want to hear it because they have different visions. They have different numbers. They have different values. And so much of this is a long-running feud inside the Democratic Party that is no closer to being sorted out. And I think there's maybe an inevitability to the clash of this week, and I think that's the White House perspective. This was going to happen at some point or the other, so let's just delay this vote. But I don't see what changes in the dynamics in the next couple of weeks because you have the progressives just as dug in and the moderates still willing to walk away.
And Kevin McCarthy gets to lean back.
Well, look, it doesn't matter. When, you know, I had a political science professor in college who told me when your adversary's in the midst of committing suicide, there's no reason to commit murder. The result is the same. And that's what's happening with Democrats right now. It's the death of 2020 Joe Biden. When he went to the Hill, 2020 Joe Biden is now officially dead and buried. The guy who ran against the progressives, ran against Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, ran to be a uniter in this country, ran saying he was going to force compromise. And he went up to Capitol Hill and he capitulated to the progressives, the liberals in his party. And why should we be surprised? He couldn't stand up to the Taliban. How could we expect him to stand up to AOC?
Okay, so look, Donna, that's a partisan take, to be sure.
No. Let me ask you a question. No, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Did he stand up to the Taliban? Why is that partisan?
He wasn't.
He hasn't stood up to anyone except for the people in his own party who nominated him.
Donald Trump invited
Bernie Sanders didn't vote for him.
Donald Trump was inviting the Taliban to Camp
I know.
David.
By the way,
let's not debate Donald Trump.
By the way, Donald Trump, in case you didn't know, Donald Trump's not in the White House anymore, and Joe Biden is kind of in the White House.
Joe Biden has created more jobs in the first couple of months of his presidency than any other president.
And more inflation. Thank you.
That inflation was already coming down the pipe.
But Donald,
and look, this notion, and look, I'm sorry that you have to cover this, Rachel and Rick. Okay,
they're okay.
I've been in a room with Democrats all my life. And I still look good, okay? Yes, you sometimes bleed in the middle of a fight, but when you're fighting for principles, these are principles, bedrock principles that Democrats believe, that we help people, that we take them out of harm's way, that we provide them with education and jobs. This is why we're
these
Democrats.
Bedrock principles lost in the Democratic primary. But Bernie Sanders was just arguing, and Elizabeth Warren lost in the Democratic primary. Joe Biden said they were extreme.
Not really. Not really.
Didn't Joe Biden say Bernie Sanders was extreme?
Well, Bernie Sanders was fighting on Medicare for all. That's not part of this. There's a whole. But let me ask you.
We're going to lower the prescription drugs prices, medicine,
to the larger
and
point.
That's bad.
To the larger point, why wouldn't Biden want to take the victory?
1.5 because they promised. You're right. They promised the moderates.
That's a lot of money, by the way. 1.5 plus 1.5.
Plus 1.9 in January.
And you want me to count up all of the 1.9 trillion tax cuts?
And guess what? Those tax, by the way, it doesn't even count.
I would need a pamper to deal with that.
I understand that you want the American people to give their money rather than keep it themselves. I get that. That's fine. You can spend it better.
You know how much money we spend every day in Afghanistan and got nothing to show for it. So let's stop talking. Let's stop talking about how much it costs and how many lives we're going to save, how many people we're going to educate, and how many seniors will have the comfort of knowing that they can take their medicine.
If you get it passed. Now let me